IVC, greetings from Austin, Texas. My semester in Montreal is over, and I'm back here for a little while. I had quite a few records shipped to Texas just because importing things into Canada is quite expensive. So I had a bunch of stuff waiting for me here, some orders from Acoustic Sounds and Soundstage Direct, as well as some stuff I got on Discogs and eBay. And so I wanted to break, it would be too long to do a video on everything that's been sitting here over a year, so I wanted to break it up into three big sections. I wanted to do one video on all the audiophile rock that I bought, one on the classical and jazz that's been waiting for me here, and one on more modern rock, punk, etc. stuff that's not really classified as audiophile pressings. So this one's just going to be, I'm just going to be going through very quickly some of the audiophile rock records that have been, I ordered over the past 7 months that have been waiting for me here in Austin. Starting with first, the Mobile Fidelity pressing of Bob Dylan's John Wesley Hardin. I had a bunch of these Mobile Fidelity Dylan pressings. I think I have Blonde on Blonde, Highway 61, Times They Are Changing, and the Freewheelin', and those are like the big important Dylan albums for me. And this is also one of my favorite Dylan albums. I think this is like the last one that I really enjoy by him, because I don't enjoy Nashville Skyline very much, and I don't like Blood on the Tracks doesn't really do much for me. So this is probably the last Mobile Fidelity Dylan pressing I'll get. Maybe I'll get Bringing It All Back Home, because I do like that album. I have the mono box set, and the mono set sounds really good, especially for the early albums. So I have good copies of everything else, but the Mobile Fidelities sound even better than the mono box, and the mono box was pressed from the analog tapes, but they just did such a good job with these that they sound incredible, even if on a lot of the albums the stereo is kind of fake or kind of weird stereo. Although this is not the case. I think they mixed this intentionally in stereo, so it sounds pretty good in stereo. Really excited to listen to this. I haven't gotten around to it yet. This is one that I've been meaning to pick up for a while. The Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. This is the mono Analog Productions pressing. Not really a huge Beach Boys fan, but I've heard so much about this record from so many people raving about it. Not only because it's an important record in the terms of the evolution of rock. I mean, it's up there with some of those late '60s Beatles records, but also the pressing and the sound quality on this is apparently the best it's ever been ever. And I figure this is kind of one of those records that just needs to be in every collection. I'm not going to get the other ones that they did in the series, because this is really the only Beach Boys record that I like. And I listened to it, and I actually really enjoyed it a lot. I thought it would be a little campy for me, but actually I enjoyed this thoroughly, so I'm excited. Speaking of more holes in my collection, this is the Analog Productions reissue of The Doors' Soft Parade. I have almost all the other Analog Productions Doors pressings except for Morrison Hotel, because I don't like that album. I don't really want to own it because I don't enjoy it. But the other Doors albums I'd had on Analog Productions 45s for a long time. And they were actually, I think The Doors' Strange Days was the first one I got, and that was kind of what got me into the Analog Productions double 45 pressings, because it sounded so much better than my Rhino pressing. So this is long overdue. It's not my favorite Doors record, but it's still a good record by a great band, and it has some songs on it that I enjoy listening to. And these aren't going to be around forever, so I'm really happy this is finding a place on my shelf. These new Janis Joplin Mobile Fidelity pressings are really incredible. Janis Joplin is a musical taste that I got kind of from my mother. I think she's a bigger Janis Joplin fan than I am. But I have the Rhino reissues of both this and Cheap Thrills, and there's just no comparison. These are so much better. Especially the Pearl pressing. This is the best I've ever heard the album. So, Janis Joplin Pearl. And I actually like the music on this one a little bit better. This is Big Brother and the Holding Company, Cheap Thrills. This is, of course, Janis Joplin's last record with Big Brother. The mastering isn't quite as good, because a lot of these tracks are from live recordings, and again, even the studio tracks aren't mastered that well. So it doesn't sound as good as Pearl, but I think the music's a little better, especially Ball and Chain. That is by far my favorite Janis Joplin song. I went and sold some records at End of an Ear today in Austin. Sold a big stack of used records to them. So I picked a couple things up while I was there, and I actually got this today, so I haven't even opened it or cleaned it yet. But this is long overdue. This is Love Forever Changes, the Rhino pressing. Now, Rhino pressings, I know, are sometimes hit or miss in terms of source tapes and mastering, but I do have it on good authority that this is actually an all analog cut from the original tapes. I think Bernie Grunman did this. Yeah, Bernie Grunman and Chris Bellum did this, and Bernie Grunman does good both digital and analog work, but I do know for a fact that this was cut from the original tapes. So really excited to listen to this because I just got into them recently, actually. Love were kind of not on my radar until I heard a lot of people talking about them on online forums, and mostly about how important this album was. And so I think I actually listened to it on my flight back from Montreal for the first time, like as a whole. I'd heard it before, but I finally sat down and listened to the entire thing on my flight on my Pono player, and it was really beautiful. I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. Really breathtaking album that kind of washes over you. So I can't wait to listen to it on the better format now on vinyl. That's it for new pressings. I got some used ones here. This is the... I actually got this sealed, by the way. This is the 2012 David Bowie Ziggy Stardust pressing that was done from the original analog tapes. This is... I think the new reissues actually are cut from the same plating and the same metal parts as this one was, so I think they're technically analog too. But this one's better, and it comes with the DVD audio, and it's from what I hear, it's much better than the Mobile Fidelity pressing. Probably best sounding Ziggy you can get if you aren't too keen on hunting down an original UK, which I'm not. Here's a record I like a lot. This is a Japanese pressing of Genesis Trespass. This isn't the most well-recorded album in the world. The drums sound pretty distant, and it sounds that way on my digital recording too. It's not just this pressing. So I wasn't, I could have tried to hunt down a UK pressing of this. I didn't really feel like it. I got a nice, clean Japanese copy. It sounds pretty good. Again, it's not the world's greatest recording quality, but the music is great, especially Knife. Knife is such an incredible song. This is really early, fiery Genesis. I tend to like the earlier Genesis stuff, except from Genesis to Revelation. I think that album's actually quite terrible. But Trespass is great. The next one is my favorite Genesis album. I think it's Trespass is up there, but I think Nursery Crime is my favorite. And this is a I forget the name of the label. This isn't an original UK press. This is a second UK press. I think it's called the Pink Hatter pressing. People who really know about this album will know what I'm talking about. It's the second UK press, because the first UK press is, you're gonna pay over $100 for a really clean one. This is now nowhere near that expensive, and it sounds almost as good. I've heard it sounds just as good as the Classic Records pressing. I was trying to hunt down the Classic Records pressing of this, but again, like $100. I'm not gonna spend that much when I can get a nice second generation UK pressing. I haven't listened to this yet. Again, I've only been home for 3 days, so I haven't listened to all these albums yet. But I've listened to a lot of them. But I have a feeling from what I've been reading on Steve Hoffman that people really like this pressing, and it's kind of a good bargain from what I hear. I just listened to this yesterday. This is Jethro Tull, Thick as a Brick. This is probably my favorite Jethro Tull album. And I know some people don't like the Mobile Fidelity pressings of the Jethro Tull stuff. I really like this. I think the dynamics and the slam of kind of the big crescendo moments in this record are really done justice by the mastering. Some people say it lacks mid-range. I didn't hear a lack of mid-range. I heard quite a sweet mid-range. Maybe that's just my system. My system likes to bring out mid-range a lot. That's what Dyne Audios do. But yeah, this is by far my favorite Jethro Tull album. If you can find this pressing, I think it's great. Really happy to have it, and I found it really cheap too, like much cheaper than it usually sells for. That's why I get those emails from Discogs, because sometimes someone will list something for sale at a much lower price than what it normally sells for, and if you get those emails, you can catch that and get it before someone else nabs it. This is a record that I've been wanting to find for a very, very long time. Some of you may recognize it. This is, of course, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Those that recognize this up here know that this is the EMI Pro Use series, the Japanese pressing. This is pretty much somewhat unanimously agreed upon as the best pressing of this album. It sounds incredible, and I have a couple good pressings. I have the Mobile Fidelity pressing, the regular Mobile Fidelity pressing, and I have the 30th anniversary reissue that was done about 10 years ago that was cut from the original analog tape. So both of those sound quite good, and I wasn't hunting desperately to find a better pressing because I have two pressings that sound pretty good. But I saw this at a really good price on eBay and nabbed it. And it didn't have the OB strip, which is why I think it was so cheap. But the record's in excellent shape. And all I can say is some of the best Floyd sound I've ever heard. These EMI Pro Use records are incredible if you can find them. I was really, really blown away by the dynamics and by the tone. Last one. The Who's Next. This is the Classic Records 200 gram pressing. Again, found it on a really great deal on eBay, and it kind of fills a hole in my Who collection. There aren't a ton of Who albums I like. I just mostly like this one and Quadrophenia. Quadrophenia is probably my favorite Who album, and then Tommy is also quite good too. But I had an original US pressing of this, and I'm kind of looking forward to now getting rid of that because I think this will sound a lot better. So that's the Audiophile Rock. Look for another video that I do on all the jazz I've been collecting. That's probably going to be a little bit of a longer video. I hope to have it up tomorrow after you see this. So thanks, VC.